Okay, so have you ever been, like, getting ready for something big?
Ah.
Like a presentation or going on a trip, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Or even just talking to someone you really want to impress, and
Hmm.
you just really want to sound confident in English.
Yeah, definitely.
You know that feeling, right?
Oh, totally.
Where you're about to speak and suddenly you're like, wait,
Yeah.
am I using the right tense?
Oh, yeah, that fear of messing up can really throw you off.
Exactly. And that's why I think this deep dive is going to be so useful.
For sure.
Because we're looking at this podcast script that you sent us,
Okay.
all about mastering English tenses
Really?
in just 15 minutes.
Wow, in 15 minutes.
Ambitious,
Love the
right?
challenge.
But hey, let's see what we can uncover.
I'm intrigued. A podcast script is source material.
I know. It's pretty cool, right?
Definitely a unique approach. And 15 minutes to master tenses?
I know.
Well, that's a challenge, but a fun one.
Definitely. So the script's laid out in 4 parts.
Okay.
Understanding the basics, then a breakdown of each tense, some practical conversation tips, and then a conclusion.
That sounds pretty comprehensive.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty solid plan.
Yeah, definitely a good roadmap for us.
Exactly. So let's just jump right in.
Okay.
The script starts by comparing tenses to a time machine for our words.
Oh, I like that.
What do you think about that analogy?
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It perfectly captures how tenses let us place actions in the past or the present or the future.
Right.
It's like we can manipulate time with our words.
It is. And this is where things get a little more complex. Because
Okay.
it's not just past, present, future.
Right.
Each time frame actually has multiple tenses.
Oh, yeah.
Simple, continuous, perfect. Perfect, continuous.
It's a lot to keep track of.
I know. It can feel a bit overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming, especially when you're first learning English.
Totally. I remember feeling that way too.
Yeah, but the script seems to break them down systematically.
It does. It does a good job.
So maybe we should do the same.
Yeah, let's do that. So the first one the script tackles is the simple present tense. I always thought this one was pretty straightforward. You know, you use it for habits and routines.
Right. I eat breakfast every morning.
Exactly. But the script points out that it's also for stating facts and truths.
Yes, and that's an important distinction.
Okay.
So think of it this way. The simple present tense is for things that are always true,
Okay.
regardless of the specific time.
Hmm.
So for example, the Earth revolves around the sun.
Right.
That's a fact stated in the simple present.
Okay.
Just like I drink coffee every morning is a habit.
I see the connection now.
Yeah.
So facts are like universal habits.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, moving on to the present continuous tense.
All right.
Now, the script really emphasizes that right now, energy.
Yeah, present continuous is all about actions happening at this very moment.
It's like a live feed.
It is like a live feed. And guess what? I'm using it right now as we speak.
Wait, really? I didn't even notice.
That's the beauty of it.
You're just doing it.
Yeah, you don't even have to think about it.
That's fascinating. So it's like you're constantly narrating the present moment
Precisely.
as it unfolds.
Yes.
Okay, now we're getting into the territory that always trips me up.
Uh-oh.
Perfect tenses.
Yeah,
I always found them a bit confusing.
I can understand that.
But the script explains it as like these tenses create a bridge between the past and the present.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
absolutely. I think that's a really good way to put it.
Mm.
You know what's fascinating about the perfect tenses is that they don't focus on when something happened,
Okay.
but rather on the fact that it happened before now and how it relates to the present.
Wait, so it's not about the when?
Not necessarily.
That's kind of a mind bender.
I know, right?
Can you give me an example?
Of course. So let's take the sentence. I have seen that movie before.
Okay.
The present perfect tense there emphasizes that you have the experience of seeing that movie,
Uh-huh.
regardless of when you actually saw it.
Right.
It's the experience that matters,
Okay.
not the specific time.
That makes more sense. It's like the impact or the relevance of that past action on the present moment
Exactly.
rather than the specific timing.
Yes, and that's a nuance that can really enrich your communication.
It can. Okay, are you ready for the one that makes my head spin?
Oh boy, which one is that?
The past perfect?
The past perfect tense. This one can be tricky,
It can.
but it's actually quite useful,
Okay.
especially when you're telling a story.
Okay.
Think of it like a flashback in a movie.
Right.
The past perfect takes us back to show something that happened even earlier in the story.
So it's like hitting the rewind button
Exactly.
to clarify what happened before a key moment.
Yeah. Can you think of an example?
I'm trying to think of an example.
Okay, well, imagine you're reading a story about a detective
Okay.
who's solving a crime.
All right.
You might read a sentence like, the detective realized the suspect had already left the country before the police arrived.
Okay.
See how the past perfect tense had left? Clarifies that the suspect's departure happened before the police arrived.
Oh, okay. I think I'm starting to see the light.
Yeah.
It's all about establishing the order of events in the past.
Precisely. And that's what makes the past perfect tense so valuable for storytelling.
It really helps you create that narrative.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, so we've tackled the present tenses.
We did.
We even survived a brush with the past perfect tense.
Oh, we did indeed.
Now let's jump into the future, shall we?
Let's do it.
And it turns out the future isn't just about will.
That's right.
There's a whole world of ongoing actions and actions completed by a specific point in the future.
It is. The future is full of possibilities.
It is.
And English has different tenses to capture those nuances.
It does.
For example, the future continuous is all about what will be in progress at a specific time in the future.
Okay, give me an example.
Okay, so think about planning a vacation.
All right. I like where this is going.
You might say, this time next week, I'll be sipping cocktails on a beach in Bali.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
Right. See how the future continuous tense paints that vivid picture of you already enjoying that vacation?
I can practically feel the sand between my toes.
Exactly. It's not just that you will be in Bali, but you'll be in the process of relaxing and enjoying your time there.
It's that ongoing action in the future.
Yes.
Okay, and what about the future perfect tense?
So the future perfect tense is all about actions that will be completed by a certain point in the future.
Okay.
It's like setting a deadline for yourself, but in the future.
I like that.
So imagine you have a big project due. You might say, by next Friday, I will have finished this report.
Right.
The future perfect tense emphasizes that the report will be done by that specific deadline.
So you're looking ahead and guaranteeing completion by a certain point.
Precisely.
Okay. And the script mentions one more, the future perfect continuous.
Oh, yes, that one.
How does that one work?
The future perfect continuous is a bit of a mouthful,
It is?
but it basically emphasizes duration in the future.
Okay.
It's like saying, by next year, I will have been living in this city for 5 years.
Uh-huh.
It highlights how long something will have been happening by a certain point in the future.
Wow. So many ways to talk about the future.
I know. It's pretty amazing.
It's like we have a whole toolkit for expressing different shades of possibility and completion.
Exactly. It's what makes English such a rich and expressive language.
I agree. I completely agree.
But wouldn't all these different tenses be confusing for someone learning English?
That's a great question. And you know what? The script actually addresses that
Oh.
in its section on conversation tips.
It does.
It's all about finding that balance
Right.
between understanding the grammar
Huh.
and just letting yourself speak naturally.
I see.
So maybe that's a good place to pick up in part 2 of our deep dive.
Yeah, let's do it.
What do you think?
I'm curious to see what tips the script offers for putting all this tense knowledge into practice.
Me too.
Yeah.
So for you listening, stay tuned because we're about to get practical and unlock the secrets to using English tenses confidently
Sound good.
in real-life conversations. See you in part 2.
See you then. So are you ready to put all this tense knowledge into practice?
I'm ready for any advice that'll help us sound more natural,
That's all right.
when we speak English.
Okay, well, the script starts with a very reassuring piece of advice.
Okay.
Don't overthink it.
Oh, music to my ears.
Right.
I know I'm guilty of that sometimes,
I think we all are.
especially when I'm trying to be, grammatically perfect.
It's a common trap.
Yeah.
But the truth is, fluency isn't about perfection.
Mm.
In everyday conversations.
Right.
The goal is to communicate effectively,
Yeah.
not to get bogged down in all the grammatical rules.
Right. It's about getting your message across.
Exactly. Mistakes are natural.
They are.
It's part of the process.
It's like learning to ride a bike.
Yes.
You're going to wobble. You might even fall a few times.
Right.
But eventually you find your balance.
You get there.
And you start cruising. It's the same with languages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great analogy.
So instead of getting stuck in your head worrying about tenses, just focus on getting your message across.
Yes. Just speak.
The more you practice, the more natural it'll become.
For sure. So what's the next tip?
Okay, what's next?
The script suggests using time markers as a guide.
Time markers.
Yeah, words like yesterday, now, soon, for a year.
Okay.
These are like little signposts
Mm,
that point us towards the right tense.
okay.
Have you ever noticed how those words naturally influence what tense you choose?
You know what? I never thought about it consciously, but you're absolutely right.
Uh-huh.
If someone says, I went to the store yesterday,
Yeah.
that word yesterday instantly tells you, okay, past tense.
It does.
It's like a mental shortcut to
Exact.
choosing the right tense.
It's like our brains are wired to connect those time markers with specific tenses.
That's fascinating.
It is. So pay attention to those little words. They're your friends.
They are our friends. So time markers help us choose the right tense without
Yes.
overthinking.
What else?
All right, this one's my favorite. Okay.
Listen and mimic.
Mm.
The script encourages us to pay attention to how native speakers use tenses in conversations
Okay.
and try to do the same.
So it's like learning by osmosis.
It is. By immersing yourself in the language,
Hmm.
you start to internalize those subtle nuances of tense usage.
It becomes less like rules and more like intuitive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like learning to dance by watching and then copying the steps.
I love that analogy. So how can we actively practice this listen and mimic technique?
Well, you can watch movies or TV shows in English,
Okay.
listen to podcasts,
Oh.
or even just strike up conversations with native speakers.
Yeah, just get out there and talk.
Exactly. The key is to pay attention to how they use tenses and then try to incorporate those patterns into your own speech.
Okay, so it's not just about memorizing the rules, it's about absorbing the rhythm and flow of the language.
Exactly. And you know what's really interesting is that as you become more comfortable with the tenses, you'll start to notice how they add these subtle shades of meaning to your communication.
Huh.
You'll be able to express yourself with more nuance and precision.
You're right. It's not just about getting the grammar right. It's about using tenses as tools to tell stories, to share experiences, to connect with others on a deeper level.
Yes.
It's like adding color to a painting.
What a beautiful way to put it. And it reminds me of something we touched upon earlier about the present perfect tense
Okay.
and how it emphasizes the impact of a past action on the present moment.
Right.
It's not just about saying what happened,
Yeah.
but conveying the significance of that experience.
It's like saying, this experience has shaped me,
Ex-
or this is what I've learned.
It adds a layer of depth to your communication.
It does. This is making me think about storytelling. How do you think a really good writer uses tenses to create a compelling story?
That's a fascinating question. A skilled writer uses tenses like a composer uses notes.
Okay.
They shift between past, present, and future to create a sense of time and movement,
Right.
to build suspense,
Uh-huh.
to draw the reader in.
And it would be so different if you only use like the simple present tense.
Imagine reading a mystery novel
Yeah.
where everything is in the simple present tense.
It would be so flat.
It would be flat and lifeless.
Yeah.
The artful use of tenses brings the story to life.
It does.
It allows the writer to control the pace, to create those flashbacks,
Uh-huh.
to foreshadow events,
Right.
and to guide the reader's emotional journey.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've explored the different types of tenses. We've talked about how to use them in conversation.
Yes.
And we've even touched on storytelling.
We did.
Is there anything else from the script's conversation tips section that we should highlight?
You know, there is one more point I think is worth emphasizing.
Okay.
The script reminds us that even native English speakers make mistakes with tenses sometimes.
Well, that's good to know.
Right. It's reassuring.
It is. It's a good reminder that we're all human.
Yeah.
And language is constantly evolving.
It is. It's a journey. So if you make a mistake, don't beat yourself up about it.
Yeah. Just keep practicing.
Correct yourself if you can, or just move on.
I love that. It's all about embracing the journey, mistakes and all.
Speaking of journeys, I think it's time for us to move on to the next stage of our deep dive.
Okay, let's do it. Let's keep this time machine rolling. Okay, so we've talked about how tenses work, how to use them, even how they can elevate storytelling.
It's true.
But before we wrap up this whole deep dive,
Okay.
I want to leave you with something to really think about.
Ooh, I like a good thought-provoking question.
So we've been talking about tenses as time machines for our words, right?
We have?
What if you were writing a story about an actual time traveler?
Whoa.
How would you use tenses to bring their adventures to life?
That's a great question. It would take a masterful command of tenses.
Right. Imagine describing a character who's constantly jumping between the past, present, and future.
Yeah, you'd have to make sure the reader really understands what's happening.
Exactly. The sequence of events, even when time itself is bending.
It'd be like weaving a tapestry of time.
It would.
You know, the writer would have to choose the right tense for each action.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure the reader can follow along.
Without getting lost.
Yes, without getting lost in a temporal tangle.
It's like the tenses themselves become part of the storytelling.
Do. They add layers of meaning.
Exactly. And complexity. For example, you could use the past perfect tense
Yeah.
to describe events that happened before the time traveler even started their journey.
Right. It would create that backstory.
That context.
Yeah.
And then as they move through different periods, you could shift between the past, present, and future tenses.
You could, to reflect their experiences.
Within those moments.
Exactly. And you could even use tenses to create a sense of anticipation or dread.
Ooh, how would you do that?
Well, imagine a sentence like this. The time traveler knew that by the time they reached their destination, everything would have changed.
Okay.
That future perfect tense adds a layer of inevitability.
It does. And maybe even a little danger.
Perhaps. It really shows how tenses can make a story so immersive.
Yeah. And emotionally engaging.
It all comes back to what we've been saying.
It does.
Mastering English tenses isn't just about the grammar.
It's about so much more.
It's about using the power of language
To tell stories.
to share your ideas.
And connect with others.
Exactly. So to everyone listening,
Yes.
we encourage you to embrace the challenge.
Yes.
Experiment with tenses.
Have fun with it.
See how you can use them to add nuance and clarity and even a touch of time-traveling magic to your communication.
And remember, if you make a mistake along the way, it's okay.
It's more than okay.
It's expected.
We're all human.
And language is constantly
So
evolving.
keep practicing
Keep exploring.
and never lose that curiosity.
That's the key. And you know what? We'd love to hear from you
We would.
about your own experiences with tenses.
Get some moments.
Share your thoughts with us.
Keep the conversation going.
Until next time, happy learning.